In the 13th century, the Mongol Empire covered a continuous landmass stretching from the Pacific Ocean to Eastern Europe. To expand further into Southeast Asia, they needed to conquer a small kingdom on their southern border called Dai Viet, modern-day Vietnam. The Mongol leadership, seen here, commanded a military machine built on absolute obedience and swift, total conquest. Their cavalry charges were highly coordinated. They utilized speed and advanced archery to overwhelm defensive lines before the enemy could even organize a retreat. By 1285, a Mongol invasion force of 500,000 soldiers approached Dai Viet. The sheer scale of the incoming army pushed the Dai Viet king to consider surrendering his nation to spare his people. If Dai Viet capitulated, the Mongols would have a clear, unopposed path into the rest of Southeast Asia. A surrender here would redraw the map of the entire region. But the king's supreme military commander, General Tran Quoc Tuan, refused to yield. When the king voiced his hesitation, the general delivered a definitive ultimatum. "If you wish to surrender, please cut off my head first." Tran Quoc Tuan knew that marching out to face 500,000 Mongol cavalrymen on an open field was strategic suicide. To survive, the Dai Viet army had to abandon conventional tactics. They needed a method of warfare that targeted the enemy's mind and leveraged the very ground they stood on. The first step was psychological. Tran Quoc Tuan wrote a military tract called Hic Thung Si, or Proclamation to the Officers, designed to convert his army's terror into focused rage. He presented his men with a stark binary. They could fight and secure their family estates and ancestral tombs, or they could surrender and watch their wives and children be enslaved by the invaders. This psychological framing took hold. Soldiers began tattooing the phrase Sat Tat, meaning kill the Mongols, directly onto their skin. He also broke rigid feudal hierarchies. Tran Quoc Tuan promoted highly skilled commoners, like fishermen and elephant trainers, into critical command roles, rewarding pure talent over noble birth. By stripping away class divisions and unifying the ranks under a single existential purpose, he forged a resistance force willing to endure overwhelming odds. With his army unified, Tran Quoc Tuan deployed his first asymmetric tactic on the battlefield, Thang Za, a doctrine of scorched earth. When the Mongols marched on the capital Thang Long, they found an empty city. The Dai Viet had evacuated, taking all food, supplies, and civilians. The Mongol cavalry, which relied on plundering local resources to sustain its massive numbers, captured a ghost town. Cut off from supply lines, the invaders slowly began to starve. This diagram shows the setup for the climax of his environmental warfare, the Bac Dang River Trap of 1288. Dai Viet forces planted rows of heavy iron-tipped wooden spikes deep into the riverbed. They used the natural tidal cycle to hide the trap. At high tide, the rising water completely obscured the spikes. Dai Viet forces then sent small boats to skirmish and lure the heavy Mongol fleet inward. As the tide naturally receded, the water level dropped rapidly. The massive Mongol ships crashed downward, their hulls violently impaled by the exposed timber. By weaponizing the tidal rhythms of his own country, Tran Quoc Tuan neutralized the world's most feared military machine. The Mongol fleet was destroyed, their southern expansion halted permanently, and Dai Viet secured its independence against an empire that spanned continents. Years later, in 1300, Tran Quoc Tuan lay on his deathbed. The king visited him, asking for one final piece of strategic advice to protect the nation in the future. The general's final counsel was, Quan Thu Suk Sun. This translates to relax the strength of the people, meaning a ruler must lower taxes and avoid exhausting the commoners in times of peace. This philosophy, prioritizing the welfare of the common citizen as the ultimate defense, cemented his legacy. He was elevated from a mortal general to Duk Tung Tran, a deified national protector. In the end, Dai Viet's survival relied on a leader who understood that an army's true strength lies not in its numbers, but in the unbreakable bond between the people and the land they call home.